Hello, friend, and welcome to the Renaissance English History Podcast, a part of the Agora Podcast Network and the original Tudor History Podcast telling stories of Tudor England since 2009. I am your host, Heather. I'm a storyteller who makes history accessible because I believe it's a pathway to understanding who we are, our place in the universe, and being much more deeply in touch with our own humanity. This is episode 263, I believe. And it is about Elizabeth Stuart, known to history as the Winter Queen. So she was the daughter of James VI of Scotland. We just marked, I suppose, November 5th, the Gunpowder Plot. I've done episodes on that. And of course, she was very much caught up in the Gunpowder Plot, which we will discuss. Just a quick reminder for patrons who are listening to this, thank you, patrons. Be sure to check the Patreon feed. There's a new mini cast up that explores modern feelings and conceptions that we got from the Tudors, things like privacy, celebrity culture, several things we dive into. So that's for patrons and YouTube members. And also the mini cast this month was on Lady Jane Grey and the succession crisis. So there's about 2 hours worth of content there. So check your feeds. If you are not already a patron or a member, you can join for as little as $1 an episode at patreon.com/EnglandCast. That's patreon.com/EnglandCast. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, just click join this channel and it's all pretty much the same. All right, my friends, let's get started. Elizabeth Stuart is known to history as the Winter Queen, as I said. She was born into a lineage steeped in ambition and tragedy. She was the daughter of James VI of Scotland, who would become James I of England. She was the granddaughter to the ill-fated Mary, Queen of Scots. Elizabeth's life seemed poised for greatness from the start. Her story intertwines with the sweeping changes of the early 17th century, a period when monarchs were beyond rulers. They were symbols of faith, power, and loyalty in a Europe on the brink of religious war. While she reigned as the Queen of Bohemia for only one winter, a single season that would end in defeat and exile, her legacy lived on in ways even she could not have anticipated. Her grandson would one day ascend the throne of Britain, anchoring the Hanoverian dynasty and reshaping British history. Elizabeth's story is one of resilience, ambition, and an unyielding spirit in the face of profound adversity, a life shaped by love, loss, and a relentless quest for her family's future. Elizabeth was born in the early morning hours of August 19, 1596, at Dunfermline Palace in Scotland, while her father, James VI, eagerly awaited news from nearby Calendar. Named for the formidable Elizabeth I of England, her godmother and her father's political predecessor, she carried the weight of legacy from her first breath. Her birth was greeted with celebration and ceremonial splendor, fitting for a princess who would symbolize not only the continuation of her line, but the union of crowns that would soon change British history. In the quiet corridors of Linlithgow Palace, Elizabeth spent her early years under the watchful care of Lady Eleanor Hay, who ensured the young princess grew up with an education and manners befitting her rank. Her family was a blend of affection and rivalry. She had a younger sister, Margaret, with whom she was not particularly close, but she did form a deep attachment to her older brother, Henry. Henry, the Prince of Scotland, and her beloved confidant became her hero. Their bond grew, fostering in Elizabeth a sense of loyalty that would shape her later decisions. This idyllic childhood in Scotland took a dramatic turn in 1603. Queen Elizabeth I's death left the English throne vacant, and Elizabeth's father was called southward as the new King James I of England. For young Elizabeth, this was the beginning of a journey into a world of grandeur and complexity that she couldn't even have understood before, where alliances and appearances would determine your fate. Accompanied by her mother, Anne of Denmark, Elizabeth traveled south in a procession filled with celebrations and festivities. while her mind must have brimmed with the thrill of the possibilities. Soon, however, she would learn that life as a royal in England would be far from the carefree days that she had known in Scotland. At just 9 years old, Elizabeth found herself unknowingly enmeshed in one of England's most dangerous conspiracies, the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. A group of Catholic dissidents plotted to kill her father, King James, and the Protestant nobility by detonating explosives beneath the Houses of Lords during the opening of Parliament. But this assassination was only the beginning. The conspirators planned to abduct young Elizabeth from her secluded residence at Combe Abbey, intending to install her on the throne as a Catholic queen. Elizabeth, spirited and precocious, reportedly cried out to her father for protection when news of the plot spread, a plea that must have struck at James's heart. She had come incredibly close to becoming a pawn in a grand religious scheme. Hearing her reaction, James would have felt the weight of his role, not only as a monarch, but as a father, protecting a daughter whose life was precariously linked to his own. With the conspirators captured and Guy Fawkes thwarted, Elizabeth was swiftly moved to safety in Coventry, far from immediate danger. The close call reinforced the reality that royalty could attract peril from any corner, and the English court took every precaution to shield her. For Elizabeth, this event was a haunting introduction to the treacherous world of royal duty, a glimpse into the dark undercurrents that could tug at the foundations of her world. Elizabeth's life at Combe Abbey, under the guidance of Lord and Lady Harrington, blossomed into one of deep learning and refinement. Her father, James I, arranged a curriculum tailored to produce a graceful yet disciplined Protestant princess, eager to navigate the world with intellect and virtue. Elizabeth was taught theology, history, natural science, music, the art of dance, but her father, ever wary of cunning tendencies, deliberately excluded Latin. However, Elizabeth's education left little lacking. She absorbed her lessons eagerly, becoming fluent in French, which would later charm her husband-to-be. Her upbringing emphasized Protestant ideals, with her tutors underscoring her royal duty to uphold and defend her faith. Her days often included rigorous sessions of horseback riding, a skill she developed with elegance, which matched her increasingly vibrant personality. Elizabeth's wit and sharp intellect were noted at a young age. She maneuvered through social gatherings with grace, catching the eye of English nobility and foreign emissaries alike. As Elizabeth grew, her warmth and charm became renowned at court. She found an intimate and lifelong friendship with Anne Dudley, for example, with whom she shared confidences. Her letters from this period show a precocious gift for diplomacy and empathy, marked by her effortless ability to speak with sincerity, making friends and allies with equal ease. Known for her loyalty, a fierce love of her family, and an adventurous spirit, Elizabeth projected an image of a young princess with both beauty and substance, a prized match for royal suitors across Europe. The question of Elizabeth's marriage became a focal point for her father, James, who viewed her union as a diplomatic tool. Of course, she was a princess. Princesses were diplomatic tools to strengthen Protestant alliances across Europe. As the daughter of a powerful king, she drew the interest of suitors from far and wide, each bringing their own political leverage. Yet her father ultimately chose Frederick V, the Elector Palatine of the Rhine, a match that promised not only affection but a shared Protestant faith in a period where religious alliances were as essential as royal bloodlines. Frederick arrived in England in October 1612. He and Elizabeth shared an immediate and easy rapport. Contemporaries noted how Frederick seemed captivated by her, seeking her company at every opportunity. Elizabeth was equally charmed by his mild manner and genuine affection, and she found herself delighted with her suitor. Their bond was unexpectedly heartfelt, a blessing in a world where love was often secondary to political gain. Her beloved brother Henry also approved of the match, adding to her joy and comfort in the arrangement. Speaking of Henry, tragically, just days after Frederick's arrival, Elizabeth's world shifted with the death of Prince Henry, who fell gravely ill and passed on November 6, 1612. Elizabeth was heartbroken, pleading for a chance to see him as he lay dying, but her appeals were denied in the interest of health precautions. His last words reportedly included a wish to see her, a sentiment that haunted Elizabeth for years to come. Amid the royal court's mourning and her own grief, the marriage plans with Frederick continued as both families sought to honor Henry's wishes. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1613, Elizabeth and Frederick were wed at the Chapel Royal in Whitehall Palace, in a ceremony marked by splendor and public enthusiasm. Thousands gathered to watch the celebrations, cheering on the couple, whose union symbolized hope and unity. The festivities, elaborate even by royal standards, extended across London with feasts, processions, and masques that nearly bankrupted her father's treasury. In the spring, Elizabeth and Frederick left England. They said farewell to her family as they traveled to their new life in Heidelberg. The parting was bittersweet, filled with hope, yet overshadowed by her family's grief. As the newlyweds sailed to their new court in the Palatinate, Elizabeth carried not only the expectations of her father and her people, but also the memory of her brother, whose early death had marked her with both sorrow and resolve. Upon her arrival in Heidelberg, Elizabeth was greeted with the warmest of welcomes. The people of the Palatinate were eager to see the English princess who had traveled across Europe to join their elector, and her reception reflected the high hopes that surrounded her marriage. Frederick was deeply in love and intent on making her feel at home, and he set about transforming Heidelberg Castle to suit her tastes. He commissioned the English building, a wing designed in her honor, and ordered a grand garden in the Italian Renaissance style that Elizabeth's former tutor, Salomon de Caus, shaped into what would become known as the Hortus Palatinus, or the eighth wonder of the world. The sprawling gardens with intricate pathways, fountains, and terraces became one of Elizabeth's most cherished spaces, a symbol of Frederick's devotion and her new life in Germany. Though Elizabeth and Frederick's marriage was born of political strategy, their bond grew with genuine affection and respect. Frederick's promise to treat Elizabeth as his queen, even over his own mother, occasionally created friction within his family. His mother, Louise Juliana, had not expected to be supplanted by her younger daughter-in-law and found herself somewhat estranged from Elizabeth. But Elizabeth navigated these tensions with a tactful grace, focusing instead on her duties and the well-being of her growing family. Over the following years, she gave birth to 3 children, Henry Frederick, Charles Louis, and Elizabeth, securing the next generation of the Palatinate. The idyllic days in Heidelberg would not last, however. Events in Europe soon began to shift, and Elizabeth and Frederick were drawn into the religious and political turmoil that would eventually engulf them in a quest far beyond the borders of their peaceful court. In 1619, Europe was on the cusp of war, and Bohemia, a land filled with religious tension, was a central stage. When the Catholic monarch Ferdinand II inherited the throne of Bohemia, he immediately sought to impose his faith on the Protestant nobles, igniting outrage. The Bohemian nobility, determined to protect their rights, rebelled against Ferdinand's rule and deposed him, seeking a new leader who would uphold religious freedom. They offered the crown to Frederick, known across Europe as a steadfast Protestant and a prince of strong lineage. Frederick hesitated, acutely aware of the risks involved. Becoming King of Bohemia meant defying the powerful Habsburgs and stepping into a role he was not sure he could sustain. Yet Elizabeth, ever passionate and unshakably loyal, encouraged him to take the chance. She urged him to see the invitation as a calling, a chance to stand for the Protestant cause in Europe and protect their shared faith. Her words bolstered his resolve, and she assured him of her support, no matter the cost. In November 1619, Frederick and Elizabeth journeyed to Prague, where they were crowned King and Queen of Bohemia in the grandeur of St. Vitus Cathedral. Elizabeth was only 23. She stood proudly beside her husband, thrilled by the promises of their bright future. The people of Prague greeted them with enthusiasm, embracing Elizabeth with open arms. Just 1 month after her coronation, she gave birth to another son, Prince Rupert, amidst celebrations and well wishes. But the optimism of that winter would be short-lived. The Habsburgs, angered and affronted by Frederick's acceptance of the Bohemian throne, mobilized their forces with intent to reclaim their stronghold. Elizabeth's father, James I, refused to support the new Bohemian monarchy, believing that the whole thing was just way too reckless. Without any strong allies, Frederick and Elizabeth soon found their rule slipping away. The Battle of White Mountain in November of 1620 sealed their fate. Frederick's forces suffered a crushing defeat, and the Winter King and the Winter Queen were driven from Bohemia after less than a year. Their dreams of a Bohemian kingdom were dashed, and Elizabeth and Frederick fled Prague, embarking on a difficult journey into exile. Their brief reign earned them their title Winter King and Winter Queen. a poignant reminder of the fleeting promise of their rule, which had lasted a little more than a single season. The defeat at the Battle of White Mountain was a crushing blow not only to Elizabeth and Frederick, but their entire family. Fearing for their lives, they fled Prague under cover of winter's harsh shadows. They were forced to leave their belongings and the life they had just begun to build, fleeing with little more than the clothes on their back. Elizabeth was pregnant again and weary, and she faced a journey filled with uncertainty as they made their way towards safety. They sought refuge in Berlin, where she gave birth to their fifth child, Maurice, on January 6, 1621. With their ancestral Palatinate now occupied by Catholic forces, Frederick and Elizabeth accepted an invitation from Prince Maurice of Orange to settle in The Hague. For Elizabeth, this new chapter was a dramatic shift away from royal privilege to near poverty. Gone were the grand castles and the lush gardens of Heidelberg, replaced by a modest court that struggled to maintain even the basic trappings of royalty. Nevertheless, Elizabeth adapted to life in exile, focusing her energies on supporting her husband, even as rumors and whispers were now labeling them the beggar king and queen. Elizabeth's spirit was unbroken. She embraced her new role in The Hague with grace, as she did with everything, it seems. She attracted a circle of English friends and supporters who helped to soften the blow of their lost kingdom. With Frederick often occupied with political, business, and attempts to regain the Palatinate, Elizabeth became an emotional anchor for her family. Their court may have been smaller and their resources limited, but Elizabeth's resilience turned the modest court into a place of intellect, friendship, and camaraderie. In 1632, Elizabeth's world was again turned upside down. Frederick had just set off to join the Swedish king Gustavus Adolphus in a bid to reclaim their lands, but he fell ill during the journey. Despite concealing his condition from Elizabeth, he passed away on November 29th, 1632. November was not a good month for them, before he could return to her. When Elizabeth received news of his death, her grief was profound. For 3 days, she shut herself away, refusing food or rest, her mind paralyzed with the loss. Her husband, her steadfast partner through years of exile and hardship, was gone, leaving her to face an uncertain future alone. Despite her sorrow, Elizabeth knew she had to rally for her children, who now depended entirely on her strength. She rejected an invitation from her brother, Charles I, to return to England, choosing instead to stay in The Hague, where her son Charles Louis's claim to the Palatinate might still be realized. With Frederick's passing, Elizabeth became the heart and mind of the family, overseeing her children's education, managing their court, and fighting tirelessly for their rights and inheritance. Over the years, she turned her attention to establishing marriages for her children, fostering connections that might one day restore the family's fortunes. She kept a lively correspondence with her friends and allies in England, penning letters filled with wit, wisdom, and occasionally the sharp barbs of a woman who had suffered much yet still had plenty to say. Though her status as Winter Queen remained an epithet tinged with loss, Elizabeth used her widowhood to solidify her legacy as a resilient, devoted mother and a woman of unshakable resolve. As the years passed, Elizabeth's role in Europe shifted from exiled queen to elder stateswoman. Her most enduring legacy came through her youngest daughter, Sophia, who would marry Ernest Augustus, Elector of Hanover. In a remarkable twist of fate, Sophia's son, George I, would later ascend the British throne in 1714, marking the start of the Hanoverian dynasty. Elizabeth, the Winter Queen whose reign had lasted just one season, became the ancestral matriarch to a royal line that would shape Britain's future for centuries. Elizabeth's life was filled with exile, dreams, and loss. She outlived 4 of her 10 children. Her brother, King Charles I, of course, was executed, and many of the allies who had once championed her cause. She passed away quietly in 1662, far from the thrones of Bohemia and the Palatinate, yet her legacy lived on, bridging her bloodline from the House of Stuart to the House of Hanover. Elizabeth Stuart may be remembered as the Winter Queen, but her spirit weathered far more than a single season. So there we have it, a little bit about Elizabeth Stuart. What an interesting woman. I know it's a little bit beyond our time, what we normally do, but she was, of course, named after Elizabeth I. And we're talking more about medieval women. We talked about Anne Neville the other week, and now it's time to go on the other side, right? And can you imagine that? Like the danger. She was only, 9 at the time? when the Gunpowder Plot happened. That just, whew, can't even think about it. Anyway, my friend, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. We will end it here. As always, you can hop into the Tudor Learning Circle at tudorlearningscircle.com to connect with other Tudor fans and share any thoughts you have with me on Elizabeth Stuart or anything related to the Tudors or Stuarts or Plantagenets or anything really. You can just tell me anything. It's all good. All right, friend. Thank you so much for being here. I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.
Blow, northern wind, ascend who may be sweating. Blow, northern wind, blow, blow, blow. Ich hatte Bord in Bauerbricht, dat soll is semlis